How is digital disruption impacting on individual rights and social justice? This panel discussion will explore the impact of digital disruption on traditional journalism. Is everyone now a journalist? Can social media hold authority to account? Will the rise of fake news undermine our trust in the media and its ability to keep those in power accountable? What are the implications for individual rights and social justice? Paul is our first speaker, Paul Wallbank. He's a freelance journalist who contributes to Fairfax, News Limited and the ABC, as well as various international outlets. For over 20 years, he's been covering how digital technologies are changing society and business. And he's been looking at where this all leaves the traditional media. And last week, he appeared before the Senate Select Committee on Public Interest Journalism. Would you please welcome Paul?
Thank you very much for that. I've got to admit I'm standing before you with a bit of an admission of failure, because had I been standing here, say, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been talking about how the great opportunities were in the digital economy, how going online was going to mean a new era of citizen activism, holding governments account, transparency from corporates, all of that. As it turns out, in 2017, I was completely and utterly wrong. That cyber utopian view, if you like, was completely and utterly flawed. So I was wrong. Many of my colleagues were wrong, that what we've seen in the last few years has been a concentration of power both by governments and by corporations, affecting both our individual rights and our corporate rights, and our rights as consumers, rather. And that's really changed the way that we operate as citizens in society, and how as consumers we are. So I'll just have a quick overview of what's really been changing there. And I've got a clip that I'd just like to show, just to give you an idea of the sort of data that's been gathered on us.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. Barack.
What?
Barack Obama.
Fine. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm so proud.
Oh, you're very kind. What's your name?
My name is Mary Jane Ray.
It's going to be famous one of these days.
Well, I appreciate you
I
guys.
was never the likeliest candidate for this office. We didn't start with much money or many endorsements. Our campaign was not hatched in the halls of Washington. It began in the backyards of Des Moines, in the living rooms of Concord, and the front porches of Charleston. This campaign can only be about me. It must be about us.
So I'll just pause it there, because this really tells us a lot about the way data is being collected on us at the moment. You can see, and you saw that through that clip, just how each of these people, first-time independent voter, individuals who are long-term Republicans, Democrats and so on, it's really, when you watch this whole clip, and it's available on YouTube or Vimeo, and if you just Google for it, it's called The Art of the Possible. It was actually used as an advert at the Cannes Lion Advertising Festival in 2009, where the Obama campaign drew with the Queensland Best Job in the World campaign for the best global marketing. And that really shows just how they were using data. I find it's quite innocent in some ways compared to what we've seen today, particularly looking at Obama compared to what's currently in the White House. But one of the things with this is that they collected a lot of data on voters, put that through the machine, and were able to really tightly focus the Obama campaign on those swing states and swing seats to get over the line. Today, they're using one of the Republican campaign operatives that I saw just before the US election last year. He was boasting how they have 300 points of data on every American citizen, minimum 300 points of data. So you think it's not just how long they've been a registered Republican or whatever, it's a lot deeper than that. And of course, when you overlay social media on top of that, a lot more data. And that opens up a lot of scope for misuse of that data. And we saw this here in Australia in spades with the Centrelink Not My Debt debacle late last year, where we saw the government actually targeting a group of people, a large group of people, the poor and disadvantaged in this country, for their own short-term political aims and in the name of budget reform, budget honesty, for want of a better term. The way that the government used that data against their own citizens really should be a wake-up to all of us. And then later on, of course, one of the people who was writing about how that data had been misused on them had her data, pardon me, released by the department and the minister's office to the Canberra Times. And I'll come back, hopefully I'll have time at the end of this to come back to the journalist side of this. That was then used against her to discredit her. And one of the departmental heads justified this in a parliamentary committee on the grounds that it was to protect the agency's reputation. So this is a big warning call to all of us as citizens that we need to be holding the public service and politicians a lot more accountable with what the data is that they're collecting on us. Now, it's not just government data either. We're increasingly seeing the private sector gathering this sort of data as well. With the Internet of Things, we're seeing that things like kettles, cars, your smoke alarm, your burglar alarm, your door lock are all being connected to the internet and are all subject to the terms and conditions that you've got from the corporations. There's a story just recently that I covered on John Deere tractors, where the tractors under Australian law you can't do anything to the software at all. Under US law, there's an exemption to the prohibition on you tampering with software. So you can do it on your own car or your own vehicle. So the farmers who are finding that if they've got a John Deere tractor, they have to use a John Deere software supplier to do any work on them, they're downloading Ukrainian software, pirated software, onto their tractors so they can maintain their tractors. Now, it's not beyond the ken of John Deere to turn around and disable those tractors. And we've seen this happen. Many of you may have had this with your inkjet printers, where if you've tried to use a third-party printer cartridge, it doesn't work. These are the sort of things that we're seeing the corporates doing there. And of course, in the social media space, we're seeing Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of these sucking up more and more data about us and on-selling them to governments, to agencies. And again, we saw with Amazon, the Kindles actually disabled 1984, George Orwell's 1984, because of a glitch in their algorithm. So these are the sort of things that are really changing on that. Now, for the media side of this, what we've seen in the last 40 years is this very cheap journalism. We saw Roger Ailes, the founder of Fox News, died 2 days ago, and he was one of the founders of this pre-digital demonising of, again, the poor, the vulnerable, the weak. A lot of what we discussed this morning on the panels here, and that's been a real theme in journalism and increasingly in politics, as we saw in the youth justice panel talk about demonising juvenile prisoners. And this is going to be increasingly a problem that we're going to have to push back on. So just to wind up, because I'm conscious that we're going to go to questions, I've painted a pretty bleak picture on what there is there, and I'd describe myself as a pessimistic optimist. In the short term, I'm quite pessimistic about where it's going, with reason, I'd suggest. In the longer term, I'm optimistic about it, that this will work out. It always is the case when we have new technologies come in, be it the motor car, be it television, be it the telegraph, whatever it was. We've been through this before over the last 2 centuries. But we all need, as citizens, to be standing up to the people in power, to the politicians, to the public service, to the media, and saying, you need to do better. And indeed, at the ballot box, be forcing our politicians to do better. So on that positive note, I'd say get out there and make it clear that you want your data more protected, and you want to have much more control over what your data is used. So on that, thank you very much.